Hi everyone, it's Benetta Wainman here, and we're talking about teens with anxiety. And today's topic is that we're talking about teens with gaming. What is too much? When does it take over their life? Is it an addiction that they've actually got addicted to gaming? And why would that be? So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about how we can help as well as their parents with their gaming. So what about why our teens get engaged in these gaming, scenarios where they want to just keep doing it time after time, hour after hour? Because when we were young, of course, there weren't such things. We would probably do a board game or go outside and play or watch TV if we actually were lucky enough to have TV. But these days, there's so much going on that our teens can get into all sorts of trouble by being addicted to these things. What I looked up first really was about why they would do that. And they do get pulled in very easily because they get introduced usually by someone that they know. So therefore, it's I suppose a social sort of thing, whereby they don't have to go out with their friends. They can actually be online with their friends. The gaming people themselves make them very bright, very enticing. Also, they have different components to it whereby you can buy different things or win different things, and that will make it easier to complete the game or to actually win the game. So when we think about all those things, no wonder our teens are pulled in. Some of the other things is to get away from life. So if there's any, toxic relationships within the family, they can go to their room and get away from it all. The other thing is, of course, they can be the hero. So instead of just being just general Joe Blogs or whatever, they can actually be the hero of that game and win the heart of the princess, or save the day, whatever it is, because that feels good, doesn't it? It makes us feel good to be able to do those things. Another thing is we can be whoever we want. So there's no judgment of who we are as people. So we could be nasty, we could be lazy, we could have a terrible looking bedroom, we could be very thin, very fat. They can be whoever we want then to those people. There's no question or judgment of who we are. In these days as well, where it's really important to be sociably acceptable, and there's a lot of social anxiety because of social media, that's a really big thing for them, is to be able to be whoever they want rather than themselves. A lot of these games as well don't cost very much money. So if they were to join a club, or if they were to do extra activities outside of school, then that might cost a lot of money and their parents wouldn't be able to afford it. Whereas if you're actually doing an online game with somebody, it might originally cost you a fair amount for the console. But once you actually have the console, which could be a Christmas present, birthday present, something like that, then the game itself can be quite inexpensive. I suppose the only thing that we've got to watch is if they become really obsessed by this game and they start wanting more and more money or time to be able to play it, then that's when it becomes more of a problem. And we do see some of our teens spending whatever money they have, or even taking their parents' credit cards and spending that money without even considering what that money is, where it's coming from, and whether they need to earn it themselves, and talk about it with their parents. It also takes them out of doing things like doing chores, being responsible for cleaning or taking out garbage, those sort of things. So, if you've got a bit of a lazy teen, you might find that gaming will be a really big thing for them, because it can get them out of doing a lot of things. So just thinking about the pandemic again and about how children, particularly our teenagers, lost contact with a lot of their peer friends. This would be a way for them to actually still keep contact with them, wouldn't it? So in the pandemic, we found that a lot of teens did turn to gaming as a way of connection. These things might be disappearing for ourselves at the moment because in Australia here, we have very few cases anywhere in Australia, and our children are back at school. And so therefore it's not a big thing. But for people, say, in the United States or in England or in some parts of Europe, there's still quite a lot of the virus around. And so therefore those children aren't allowed to go to school, to play sports outside of school. And so it's becoming an even bigger problem for many parents. Not obviously of a difficulty for the teens because they're enjoying, they're having fun. But for us as parents, it can be quite frustrating to have a child who's always attached to some game or other. So why am I so interested in this? Because I feel that a lot of our children are missing out on the outside, like, and also because when you become addicted to something, I would like to really go into a bit of, I suppose, of us to deal with it. And I think I'll start talking about it if we allow them to have some say and to be able to try and compromise. That might be a way for us to move forward in these times. And today I'd also like to say that one of my friends, Adaire Palmer, is going to come and talk also about an issue that she had, and that it's something close to her heart too. So as parents, what can we do? What can we really do here? We can actually, I suppose, talk to our teens. You know, when they have anxiety as well, it's easy for them to turn to these games. But really, it's, I suppose, how long they're there, whether it's interrupting with their school life, their social life, or whether it's actually, coming between their grades. There's lots of reasons why we need to be very cautious about teens with anxiety taking up these sort of video games. When we think about anxiety, a lot of it is social anxiety caused by social media. So social media tells us how we should be, how we should look, how we should act. And quite often, if we don't go to those standards, if we don't actually think about those standards, then we can be socially acceptable. So that we've got something from Roz here. Hi, good day, Roz. Oh, you're in South Australia. That's nice. And it is sunny, is it, today? Because really here it's pretty sunny in Melbourne too, which is pretty good for us at this time of year. Have you got any questions for us, Roz? Because I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. Carrying on until Roz decides if she's got a question for us, let's think about some of the things that we can do. Okay, Roz says, my boys were especially hooked to playing Nintendo games when they were in their teens and still play them occasionally as internet multiplayers. That's great, right, Roz? You know, sometimes it's just a phase. And this phase is okay. You know, if they can just play those games until it's time for them to move forward and to leave that phase behind, that's fine. Because I think that getting hooked is what they're intending, right? Nintendo intend our kids to get hooked and to want to play more and more and to spend more and more money. And then the next game comes out and the next game is sort of like, you know, a follow-on. So I know that my son got very into Nintendo games, and yeah, it is a hook on. So they want to hook us. Yeah, so when the kids grow up, quite a lot of the time they leave that phase behind, but still love to play it because I think it reminds them of old times. It reminds them of when they had fun, and that's fine. You know, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it doesn't really interfere with their life, then that's the difference, isn't it? What else? Adaire's telling me. Oh yeah. So that's the thing, is that when we just look at it and we can laugh about it, um, it's okay. I'm wondering if, Ros, did you ever get, like, I suppose, ask them a lot about the game? Because I know that my son, when all the Pokemon movies came out, I was asked to go because his dad just didn't want to. Some of his friends didn't have the money to go, so I ended up going to the movies to watch those movies. And sometimes I would try and pretend that I knew what was going on, but he would pull me up on everything, just like the Harry Potter books or anything like that. Is as soon as he was like, "Oh, we'll talk about it," I couldn't get out of it. So therefore, I realised about after the first one or two that I had to take some notice, because otherwise I was going to be in trouble by the time we got home. Um, so yeah, Ros, you're concerned now about your grandchildren getting hooked, and particularly phones. We might talk about phones another time and social media, but yeah, it's very difficult because I think they lose the ability then to connect personally with their friends if they are really very hooked on those sort of things. But I think, if you've been through it before with your own boys, you might be able to guide them a bit by being a grandmother, and saying it's okay to play games and it's okay to have fun. However, if it takes the place of your friends, if it takes the place of going out and having fun with them and connecting on a personal level, or, to sit in a room and not want to move out there, then we have to sort of, like, I suppose, guide them to a different place, because yeah, it's fun, but there's a lot more things outside of their room and outside of those games to experience. So I suppose if we take them out and we allow them to do that, then that might be something that encourages them to get out and about. So I think that, we're saying about computerized games. So Roz is a hypnotherapist. Do you use your hypnotherapy for your grandchildren, Roz? Because I think that would be a great thing to do. Um, to steer them away and to actually get them to imagine being outside, or to imagine being in a different place and connecting on a personal level with their friends. Being out in a park, because we as hypnotherapists really do those imagine what it would be like to be out in the sun today, which, yeah, the sun is out. Wouldn't it be great to be out in the sun, or to be down at the beach, or wherever they like to go? So I think the other thing that I'm saying here as well is to connect with your kids about those games, and to sort of like say, okay, what's so good about it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And maybe even play some of the games with them, and then say, oh, you know what? It's a bit boring playing those games all the time, but to play them for a short time is great. I'm just having a look at Roz's answer here. Uh, yeah, it's often difficult, isn't it, if we actually don't live in the same places. But I'm sure, Roz, that you spend some time with your grandchildren. So not being able to connect with them daily or anything is one thing. But, when they come and stay with you, or when you go to stay with them, it would be a good thing to do. So I'm just thinking about, other things that we can do. So once we play with them, once we tell them that it's a bit boring and that maybe there's something else that would be more exciting to do. What about if they need money? If they actually need money for these games, maybe we can get them to actually do something for that money. So if we start young enough, getting them to wash some pots, or take out the garbage, or whatever you want them to do, keep their room clean, they'll probably be much more accepting of it if they're going to use that money towards something that they really love, which is probably the game that they want, or to be able to buy some sort of like lives. I don't know, they buy lives, they buy a suit of armor or whatever it is that they want to buy. So it could be something that's quite positive in that respect of getting them to do something for you. What about if you get them to see a counsellor about gaming, and say, okay, if your grades are not very good, maybe we can get you to go and see someone like a hypnotherapist to help you get better grades, to feel as though you have more self-esteem or self-confidence in something that you want to do. Because if we're using that gaming to pull them in and say, hey, you can have an extra hour if you go and do an hour with a therapist, because some kids are a little bit reluctant to go and get help. But it might be the help that they need for anxiety that would be, something to really work on. Because if they can allow their anxiety to dissipate and they can see themselves having more confidence in themselves, then guess what? They might leave the gaming behind, because it is obviously something to take them away from reality. For us, I think also to deal with something in a calm manner. So one of the things that we've talked about before on this program is about the chaos to calm program. And that means that, when we're feeling anxious in ourselves about something, and it might be that we're anxious about where's this going? How much time is it taking? Are the kids getting good grades? Are they able to then go and connect with people on a personal level? So the more we become anxious, the more our teens will become anxious. So it's a cycle whereby one person starts the cycle and then the other follows suit. So if we can have a very calm and calculated way of thinking about it, if we can allow our subconscious or emotional mind to calm down so that we can think in a logical manner with our conscious mind, then of course it will help us to cope so much better with what's going on. Of course, there is a thing about sleep and eating. And if your teen isn't eating and isn't sleeping, they will not be able to cope with life very well. And that goes for us too. So we do have to look after ourselves. And also, if we understand that sometimes our teen can't break off that game right then when it's dinner time because they'll let the side down, they'll let the other players down, then we might have to allow them to eat in their room sometimes, but just sometimes. Say, okay, can you work it so that you can eat at this time? And if they can't, take their meal in, allow them to eat and drink, and then say, okay, but afterwards you have to bring the pots out, and not only you have to do that, maybe you have to wash the pots, or you have to do something for me, or you have to go to bed at a certain time. Therefore, there's no negotiation about what time you finish. Because I think putting boundaries in is what's necessary. If we can't put in boundaries and then stick to it, then of course we're going to have to really pull I'm the parent, you need to listen to me. But I think if we can, particularly with our teens, allow them a little bit of say, because none of us like to be unseen or unheard or not listened to by what we're saying. Because so many times what I hear from my teens is that, well, my parents aren't interested, or they actually are just watching the TV, or they're drinking, or they're on their phones the whole time. And so if they don't feel as though they're being listened to and understood, then that's a bigger problem in itself, isn't it? But with anxiety, it can be treated, and it can be, something that can push us forward sometimes. But it's just knowing when that anxiety is taking over, and be replaced with gaming and being addicted to gaming. You know, the love of games is one thing, but the addiction to games is a different matter altogether. So I was going to ask Adaire to come on and give us her story, just to see what she would like to say. So if you're there, Adaire, and you'd like to come on, that would be great. Hi there. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. And I know that you've got a bit of a backstory of your own here about an addiction to gaming. Would you like to join in and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting topic, Benetta, and it's really quite distressing for people who have, well, for me, it wasn't a teen, although Darty did do a lot of, I'm calling him out now, he did do a lot of gaming, but it didn't seem to, like, in terms of in the relationship between using gaming to cover up anxiety or social anxiety. I think he was doing it for a bit of fun, and he seemed to engage in other activities as well. So it wasn't totally focused on gaming. It wasn't his life. But there was a couple of other people. We've actually, in a previous life, we had a room at the front of our house that we rented out or let family members stay in for, and so there's been a few people that have stayed with us, and a couple of them, one of them was a family member. I don't want to identify anyone, but or extended family member. Both of them had issues with gaming to cover anxiety. And it was, I think, the thing that for the people, now, I know it's a bit different when you've got your child. I just wanted to share, I guess, from the impact, because it's possibly the same or very similar for parents who have teens who are using gaming to cover up or to avoid dealing with anxiety. And some of the things that we experienced, or I experienced personally, were the inability to be able to connect with these people, or with this, we'll just call our person. So it was distressing because you want to help, and they're probably quite extreme cases, because there were issues with personal hygiene, and there were issues with being able to do daily functions, and like to be able to actually even just go out and pay bills or have a doctor's appointment. They were very, very extreme. Now I'm hoping that a lot of people just don't experience this for their own children, because I can imagine it would be so incredibly distressing. So some of the things that you have suggested are really good ways to get people to, or for parents to get their teens to be able to deal with any anxiety, to take their mind off it and do different things. But I do recall one particular instance where I asked this person what they would need to make them feel happy, because they were, like, anxiety and depression quite often go hand in hand. And so, and when you get them to the point where it's just like, oh, I don't know, and there was no engagement in their own life, and I was using hypnotherapy tools as well, trying to get them to think back to a time when they were happy and were interested in things that were outside of their room. And it was like, I don't know, I can't. It just really struck me, because it was how, this actually, they couldn't even recall a time when they were happy, to be able to call back that feeling. It was really quite distressing. So yeah,
I think the main thing here is to try and nip it in the bud as soon as you start to see those things happening, because the longer it goes on, then the more deep the depression, or the more that they've blown the anxiety out of the water, right? So the more that we can find these things and, I suppose, dispel them early on, and just realize, you know, that when the gaming becomes more than just fun, then that's the time that we need to step in and, I suppose, try and guide them to someone who can help them. Because quite often, as you know, if you're a parent, or if you're a parent figure, that the child will not listen to you, right? Because what do you know? Who are you to tell me? All those things, you know, that we've been through. But as soon as a therapist tells them something else and gets them to understand what's really happening and why it's happening, then that's when the light bulb turns on for them. And they start to actually think, oh, well, maybe, you know, there's, you know, this thing of my mind's crazy. I'm a crazy person. I can't go out. Seems to just disappear, you know, and they understand the reasons behind why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. It's like the prophet doesn't bode well in their own land, doesn't it?
That's exactly right.
Like, you know, what would you know? You're only, you know, you're only a parent or a parent figure only, but, and they usually in the teen years, they tend to go through some sort of rebelliousness as well. So there's that extra, the added control. So, and with the situation, it did resolve itself, but it didn't actually resolve itself. It came to a head because we didn't nip it in the bud. So, and I know you're nearly out of time, but I'm just thinking just quickly, the nipping it in the bud thing is like how it's almost like a dripping tap. It's like you don't know the bucket. It's like, you know, putting a frog in a bucket of water and in a pot with cold water, and then turning the heat up, and the frog doesn't know that the heat's getting turned up until it's too late. So it seems to me to be some similarities to that analogy.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, you know, we're even seeing that the teens are now becoming younger, and there's a book actually called 10 Ager, because they're saying that at the age of 10, that the hormones and things have started to kick in, and that's when we should be picking up on these things, social anxiety. Because to be honest, this is all about social anxiety.
It is, and I think that is something that's, we really do need to. It's a great idea to start looking. You know, I'm thinking about my grandkids now, as Ros mentioned before, and I'm seeing that there potentially could be issues if we don't put some boundaries in and have, you know, have some I guess parental controls around, you know.
Yeah, and also to get them outside, you know, and to run them around, take them swimming, take them hiking, get them on a bike, all the things we used to do that they've forgotten to do now, right?
Yeah. I think
even board games, you know, something that you get your hands on, something that you can actually touch and people in a room and play those without judgment, without somebody saying how hopeless they are or whatever. So I think it's that, you know, to be themselves and to be okay with being themselves with people.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of, I suppose, rejigging to do to go back to somewhere where we were before, but still bring in the futuristic things that we have. Because, you know, if we can do that and bring some balance to our teens and to those, I mean, those teens are going to be parents in not too many years. And that's a bit scary if they're actually running away from life and running into addictions because of social anxiety. So I think next week, you know, it'll be a big one. We might talk about social media, which I know that you're a big person in social media, right? So I think we should talk about that next week. But today I'm hoping that we've given some direction. And also, you know, people can contact us directly and talk to us. But for today, I'd like people to realise that for self-care of a parent is really, really important. So if they'd like to download something to listen to, which will just calm their system, calm their mind, their, many chasing thoughts, and calm that chaos, then they can just write calm in our comments, and we'll be sending something to them so that they can allow themselves to have a little bit of me time and calming time. So, and it's lovely to see that Roz has been here today. Thanks, Roz, for tuning in. And hopefully we've given you some pointers, and it's lovely to see you. And yeah, if you want any more pointers, just send us a little message and we'll get back to you. I think our time is just about up. But next week we'll be here, same time, Wednesday afternoon, 2:30, talking about teen anxiety. So it's really good to be with